Hello everyone. Can you check if my voice and is audible and I am visible? Like, are you able to see me? Cool. So we'll wait for some time. I think people are still joining. Yeah. Hello Ganesh. Good evening, Shruti. Okay. So what is your current semester? Okay. Got it. Got it. Final year, first sem. Okay. So most of you might be aware of how web development works, right? Okay. We'll wait for a few more minutes. Good evening, Mukesh. Okay, so before starting, I'll introduce myself. So my name is Sunny Sharma. I have a total experience of 8 years in this industry in software development. And I started my career as a full stack developer. I'll tell you what actually full stack is as we go forward with this course. Then so basically initially I joined one of the startup and I was working on a technology called Ruby on Rails. So Ruby on Rails is basically so with Ruby on Rails we used to build web applications, and those web applications were monolithic. Currently I um, currently my role in the company is a team lead. So basically I lead a team of front end developers, and I have moved from full stack to front end development. Also my current tech stack is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, which is basic of all the front end development. And with that we use React.js as a library to build user interfaces. Okay, so throughout the this is our first class, and throughout this full session, not just today, like on all the coming days, what we'll be covering is first I'll help you understand what actually web development is, how web development works in the industry. Then I'll explain you what is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then we'll move to React.js, and we'll create a project using all these technologies. Meanwhile, I'll also give you an idea on how the interviews are held and what type of questions usually they ask in the industry for front end development role. So my focus throughout the session will be only targeted to front end development. Okay, any questions? Okay, so now as this is our first class, I'll make it I'll make it simple. Will not go through complex examples, or will not learn new technologies from today itself. So today what we'll do is we'll first try to understand how web development works in the industry. Okay, so before that um, now, who knows the difference between websites and web applications? Okay, okay. So basically, see, websites are collection of web pages. Now, these web pages are mostly static web pages. That means it doesn't have, it is not dynamic. Like for an example, you might have gone through some companies' uh, websites, right? Let's say Infosys. So when you type infosys.com or infosys.in, then you will see a website. Those are websites, those are not web applications. But web applications are more complex than websites. Web applications are not static. They are dynamic. Like for an example, we'll take an example of Facebook. So Facebook comes under web applications. Why? Because a user is able to interact with the website. They are able to log in, they are able to register, they are able to post. So all these things happen on in Facebook. So that comes under the category of web applications. Yes, Facebook is dynamic. Similarly, we have um, Twitter or YouTube or different applications, Google applications like Google has Google Excel, Google Sheets. Then we have Google Slides. Those are all those websites or applications come under web application category. Yes. Yes, Sandeep. So website typically consists of static web pages that provide information and content to the visitor. That's it. That's the role of the website. While now web applications allow us to interact with the application itself. Now, if we just use HTML, CSS, and basic of JavaScript, we can create websites. But to create web applications, we need we just don't need the front end technologies. We'll also need backend technologies like Python, Java, or Node.js. We will need a database like MySQL, then Mongo. So this full system, which includes front end, back end, database, and some business logics, all those things consist of web application. Like web application consists of all these things. Okay. Um, so okay, now in the industry, whenever like mostly the developers who are developing web applications are divided into three categories, like three profiles. First is front end developers. So front end developers mostly create front end part of the web applications. um, they will use technologies like HTML, CSS, JavaScript. They will use front end libraries called like React.js. There are frameworks similar to React.js. There are other frameworks like Angular. Also, there is a library called Vue.js. So all these frameworks or library like React.js, Angular, Vue.js are used to create single page applications, and they are dynamic. Also, there are backend developers mostly write APIs and business logics of that application. Like for an example, a user is trying to create a login page. Now login page, uh, so the client will see a page that will have a username and a password text field and a button called submit. When they click on the button, then this request goes to the web server. So now sending a request to the web server via API is written by the backend developer. Then once they receive the credential, what should they do? They will first write a logic to search it on the database. In the database, they will search for that particular user. They will verify the credentials, and if the user exists, then they will return the access token. I'll tell you what access token is, and plus they will also send the user profile. So this is the job of backend developer, basically writing the actual logic on what should happen when a user is interacting with the web application or the front end application. This logic is written by the backend developer. Similarly, when a user registers, so what a user what a client or end user will see is a sign up form which will ask for name, email, phone number. He will click on submit, and now this request will go to the backend. Now backend developer will take this data, store it in the DB, and once it is success, they will respond with success message. And if it fails, then they will send the error code. Okay, so this is backend developers. These are backend developers. There are also developers who work on both the technologies like front end and back end. So basically they write the front end applications as well as they write the back end applications. These developers are called full stack developers. So as I said, I started my career as a full stack developer, so you can assume that I have a bit knowledge on both the sides. Currently my focus is front end development. I mostly in a company I mostly handle the front end part. There is a team who handles the back end development. Okay, now can anyone tell me, like, when you enter a URL, let's suppose we are trying to access google.com. So when you enter this URL in the browser, in the address bar of the browser, what actually happens in the backend? Okay, Java framework is saying maps, IP address, DNS. Yes, Falcon. Okay, I'll explain you this with some diagram. Okay, so you can see this, right? A user first enters google.com. Now there is a DNS server. So the role of DNS server is to map the domain name with the IP address. Why IP address? Why don't we directly give? So basically, all the servers as well as your computers, they have an address. That address is IP address. Now every request will route to the IP address and not the actual domain. That's why, but IP addresses are difficult to understand, as well as we can't remember, right? Like, when I ask you to open google.com, you won't you won't remember the IP address. Instead, google.com is easier to remember. That's why they came up with a concept of domain names. But now the request has to be routed to the IP addresses. So there is a system which lies in between the request sent by the browser and the actual request going to the server is the DNS system. So what does DNS system do is, whenever a user enters google.com in the browser, this request goes to a DNS server. From there it will search for google.com, and with that google.com he will see the IP. Now the request comes back to the browser again with that IP address. Now the actual request will go will take this IP address and go to the actual server located inside Google, which will then return you the website which you see, the search website. Okay, so as soon as you enter the domain name in the address bar, the first thing which happens is this part. Okay, now the next part, once a user gets the IP address, now this request will go to the web server via internet. There, uh, if we are just calling the website or the front end part, then it will return from here. It will return that website, the bundle of the front end code, and which will be visible in the browser. If you are sending any other request like login or sign up, at that time he will no, the request will go to the web server. Some business logic will happen, like searching the database, then verifying the record, and once he finds a user, or once the request is success, at that time he will send a response with a success message to the browser again. So this is how the um, uh, um, full request response structure happens on the internet. Any questions? Yes, yes, Harita. So in case of Java, it sends request to JVM, storing and from the server database. Okay. Okay. Java framework is waiting for more technical stuff. So Java framework, can you explain us how this OSI model works? Okay. No. So as I said, so mostly we'll be covering front end development here. Right now, we'll not go to this network thing. Okay. Now, so what we'll do is, I'll explain. So we'll go through some tools. Okay. So we'll go through some tools which we'll be using throughout the courses, throughout this course. So the first tool is VS Code. VS Code is an IDE which we use to write code. Then we'll go through a browser, what all tools we can use in the browser. So mostly I'll suggest we use Chrome browser because it has more functionalities compared to other browsers. Then we'll discuss on GitHub, like or Git or version control, how we can uh, why do we use version control and how do we use version control. So i'll s- I'll share my screen. Okay. So first, you will have to download VS Code. So this is how you can download VS Code. So you can download VS Code for Windows, Linux, as well as for Mac. Right now I'm using Mac and I have already installed it. But you can click on install and the download will start and you can then install it. So once it is installed, what you will see is this. So this is VS Code. Now I am using some plugins from the marketplace here. You can also use this. Like one is Prettier. Sorry. So Prettier is this one. So what is the role of Prettier is like when you write code, sometimes we don't follow a pattern or we don't write it cleanly. So Prettier helps us, or it actually formats the code and makes it pretty, so that so in the industry, like whenever we write code, we make sure that the code is pretty, so that other developers who are working on the same code understands it. Okay. um, yeah, I think this is the tool which we'll be using. So this is VS Code. You can create a new text file and start coding here. Then Chrome browser. So I think most of you might have already installed Chrome browser, but if not, then you can download Chrome browser from this website. Download it. So what I'm using right now is Chrome browser. Okay, so now why Chrome browser? Because we have dev tools in Chrome browser. So these are the dev tools. The shortcut to open this dev tool in Chrome is in Mac is Command Shift C. In Windows, I think it is Command Control I. I'm not sure. Or another way to open this dev tool is click on this uh, menu, then more tools. Under that, we'll have developer tools. Okay. Now so this dev tool is divided into multiple tabs, as you can see here. Okay, so first is element. So why? So the tabs which we'll be using frequently is elements, console, network tab, and application tab. So why? So in application tab, like for an let's suppose you are developing an application and you want to edit some code, or let's say you want to edit the code here. So what you will do is you will select you will click on this arrow and select that particular div. Now you see it is a parent, it is a p tag. Now under that, you on the right hand side you will see the css css on that p tag, parent paragraph tag. And now let's suppose instead of 21 pixel we want to try using 22 pixel. Why do we do it? See, when you are writing a code, you are writing it in the IDE, so basically it is away from the browser. So you now you won't get the look and feel of how it will actually look. That's why we mostly suggest that you select the particular tag, do the styling here, and once you are good with the styling, you just copy this and paste it in your actual code. Okay. So that's why we mostly use element tag, so that uh, we can do trial and hit directly on the browser. Now console. See, so this tab is mostly used when we are dealing with HTML and CSS. Console will be mostly used when we are dealing with JavaScript. Let's suppose you want to debug something, or you want to see what a variable stores. In that case, you will do console.log and the variable name, which will be displayed here. I'll show you an example uh, once we start JavaScript. So console.log, and whatever we type here, so will be displayed here. Okay. Network tab. So when we will start writing web applications, at that time we'll be calling APIs. So those API requests will be seen here. Like for an example, let's say so let's say there is a website here, this one. Or wait, I'll go through um, okay, we'll do google.com. Okay. So you can see these are the requests that are sent to the backend via APIs, and each request will have headers. Headers is the extra metadata which is sent with every request. So the request method here is post. Similarly, we'll have response headers. So these are response headers. We have request headers here, plus the payload. So with every request, now if the UI wants to send some payload, then those payload will be displayed here. And this is the preview of response, and this is the actual response. So while testing the APIs, we will be using this network tab, where we will see the API is getting called, what data we are sending, and what response we are getting. Based on that, we'll render the UI. Okay. And applications. See, when a user is logging in, and if the credentials are verified, we send access token. A backend code sends access token. Access token is basically a token which which has the information about the user. So that data has to be stored somewhere in the front end application. So if we store it in a variable, then once the page reloads, then that variable is lost and it is reset, so user information won't be retained. But if we are storing it in local storage, so these are storage supported by the browsers. One is local storage, one is session storage, and one is IndexedDB. Also, there are cookies. So I'll explain you this in details when we come across web APIs or browser APIs. At that time, we'll discuss all these different type of storage. But right now, I'm just giving you an idea. Like, whenever we want to store a data which has to be retained even when a user reloads the page, then those data is stored in the local storage or cookies. Okay, so these are the tabs which we'll be using more frequently. One is elements, one is console, one is network tab, and one is application. Okay, so these are from the so this is what so I have explained you VS Code, I have explained you browser. Now GitHub. So version control. How many of you know about version control, or how many of you have used GitHub or Bitbucket? Okay, Java framework. So payload is basically see so I explained you about login form, right? So in login form, a user enters username and password and he clicks on submit button. Now when he clicks on submit button, at that time API request is raised. So, and we have to send those credentials, username and password, to the APIs. Now if the API is post request, at that time data will be sent in the payload. Yes, 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 username and password. Okay, so how many of you have used GitHub or Bitbucket? Okay, see, Right now, when you are developing the application, now you will be developing it alone, right? So you don't have colleagues who are working on the same code, right? But when you work in the industry, at that time, close to 20-30 people will be working on the same application. So basically they will be changing files in the same project. Okay, in that case, we have to make sure that whatever change we are doing has to be present in other developers local machine as well. So so to handle this thing, we use GitHub. Like for an example, you are developing a feature in the application. Now you have completed that feature. Now you will push this feature to the Git. Now other developer who will be working on some feature will pull the current code or pull the changes which you have done. So those changes or your changes will be available in his local machine as well. Now he can develop other feature or other or he can extend that feature, you or he can work on your code. So this is how this is. So basically this Git is will be used as a collaboration tool. Yes, so basically multiple developers can collaborate and work on a single project using GitHub tool. Also, there is another example where you have developed a feature and that feature has been deployed, but now that production deployment or production application has an issue or faced has come there is an issue which is caused using your feature. Now they have to revert back. How will they revert back? One thing is they will comment your code, or first they will have to remove your code. But if you are building a feature, then there are possibilities that you might have changed 50 files, and removing all those 55 code your code from those 50 files is difficult. So in that case, what you will do is you will find a previous version of the current version, or the previous version of the production version. That now this versioning is maintained by Git. So that's why we call it as version control. Git is a tool and GitHub is an application which uses this tool. Similarly, Bitbucket is a application which uses Git in the back as a base, and they have created their own applications. So ultimately, either you can use Bitbucket or you can use GitHub, but the base remains same, that is Git. Okay, so there are different. Okay, I'll explain you this with a diagram. Okay, so you can see till here it is a local machine. Okay, and this is a remote is basically remote is basically so let's say if we are using GitHub, then remote is basically a GitHub server or Bitbucket server, okay, where you are actually pushing a code. Okay, and this is the local directory or local machine where you are currently developing the code. Okay, so how to use this tool? So there are few commands which we will be using across project development, to make sure that we push the code to the GitHub, and other people can go and pull your code in their local machines. So first command is git add. So git add, what it does is, let's suppose you are in a branch, main branch. Now what is branch? So let's suppose you are developing an application. Whenever you are developing you are working on an application and you are working on two features. Now each feature has to be developed in two different branches. So you will create from the main branch is the production actual branch, where all the code developed created by or not or yes coded by different developers will be merged in one branch. That branch is main branch. So whenever you uh, okay, so from main branch, now you are starting you will start developing a new application, a new feature. So you will create a new branch from this main branch, and you will write a code in that new branch. Once you are done with the changes, at that time what you will do is git add, and the file name, or git add dot for the current directory. So git add dot means all the files that you have changed in that particular branch will be moved to staging area. Now what is staging area? So once you so staging means targeting the files which need to be pushed to the to the github. Okay, so first you have to target those files and mark those files, or flag those files which you need to push. So you will use git add to mark those files. Once those files are marked, then you will write a commit, git commit with a message telling, okay, these are the changes which I have done, or or the message which explains what you have done in that particular code. So you first command you will do is git add, then you will do git commit. And now once the commit is done, now you will actually push your changes to the github server using git push origin main, or git push origin your branch name. If you are if you have if your current branch is main, then you will do git push origin main. And if your current branch is some development branch, suppose xyz, in that case you will do git push origin xyz. Similarly, other person who wants your code in his local machine will do git pull origin your branch name. Okay, so in this way your code will be will be pulled in your colleague's development machine or local machine. Okay, Khan Studio, it's automated in collab for YouTube analytics. Okay, what is this? Yes, no, so once we start developing the application, at that time we'll show you how it is done practically. So I have explained you VS Code. VS Code will be used to write code. Then we'll be using browser to see how our code looks. Plus we will to make those changes or to do hit and trial. At that time we'll be using browser browser developer tools. And we will be using GitHub to make sure that our code is pushed to GitHub, so that other person or other people can look at your code. Okay. Okay, one more use case of using version control is, let's suppose you are working, so you have a local machine where you are actually developing a code. And if you and let's suppose you have worked in that code for like 1 week, and now suddenly your laptop goes off, or your laptop corrupts. In that case your whole code will be gone. So basically your full 1 week work will be gone. So but if you have a practice of pushing your code to GitHub or a repo, a single repository, in that case even if your laptop corrupts, and you um, still your code will be present in the GitHub. And when you buy a new machine, or when you repair your machine, at that time if you clone it, if you pull your code, then that code will be retained. So it is a good habit to use version control, it is a good habit to use git, and it is a good habit to push the changes on daily basis on that git, so that everyone has access to it, as well as th- uh, that data is stored somewhere, so that if you lose your laptop, or if you lose your machine, in that case also you will be able to retrieve those files. Okay. So this is why we should always use git control. In most of the, like, in all the industries basically we use this version control. So it helps us to work, or to it helps multiple or many developers to work on single applications. It creates versions so that if any thing goes wrong in the current version, so we can always roll back to the previous version, deploy it to the production, fix the changes, and then re-push to the production. So these all things is handled using git. Okay. Okay, now what we'll do is uh, we'll go through uh, so first I'll give you a small or a demo on what HTML files look like, what codes, no, what we code in HTML, what we code in CSS, and what we code in JavaScript. Okay, so I'll start typing code now. Okay, so this is my terminal. Most of the time I'll be using terminal. So right now you can see I am in a directory. This directory is desktop. Similarly, if you want to see the GUI of that directory, this is the directory. Okay. Okay. Now if I do ls, there is this one file, and you can see this one file is here. Now what we'll do is first we'll create a folder, an empty folder, mkdir. This is make directory and folder name. This lesson one. Okay. Now we'll go to this lesson one directory. Cd is change directory. Okay. Now we are inside this directory. Now you can see there is, so a folder is created called a directory is created called lesson one. Under that there is no file. Okay. Now inside this file we will create a HTML file, touch index.html. So now you can see we have created one index.html file here. Okay. So touch is used to create a file. So ls is list directory. So whatever folders or files are there in that current directory, that will be shown here with ls. Then I have used mkdir, that is used to make the directory. Cd is to change the directory, and touch is used to create a file. Okay. Now what we'll do is we'll open this folder in VS Code. So once you install VS Code in your local, this command will be available to you. /code. Code will be given to you by VS Code. So if you let's suppose from the terminal you want to open Visual Code for that particular directory, you just have to type code // is current directory and enter. So VS Code will be open now. Okay. Okay. Now we are, so this is a directory name, lesson one. This directory we created here. Okay. Under that we have one file called index.html. Okay. Now, so if you are using VS Code, then most of the things will come handy here. Like for an example, you type HTML and you see now here. So VS Code has so by default it integrates with Emmet. Emmet is basically, it creates a boilerplate by typing like for an example, if you want to create a structure of basic HTML, then you just have to type HTML, then select, and this full structure is created. So this is what the HTML file, a basic HTML file looks like. The first line here explains the browser that the version of HTML we will be using is HTML5. If we remove this line, then browser will think that we are using HTML4, and it will not support our current or HTML5 features in that browser. Okay, so it is always mandatory, as we'll be using HTML5, it is mandatory to use doc type HTML. Okay, now HTML file always starts with HTML. Okay, here language, it says that the code or the application which we'll be building will use English as the language. Okay, now, and any HTML page is divided into two parts. One is head part and one is body part. Head part mostly consists of metadata of that page, and body part consists of whatever we see in the browser. Okay, and so under head we see meta cassette, meta name, viewport, and title. So this title, um, okay, so now you can see, if I open this file in a browser, okay, you see document is written here. So this comes from title, my first HTML page. Okay, so everything inside head comes under the metadata of that page, and whatever we do inside body tag will be displayed here. Okay, in the window, in the browser, actual browser. Let's say h1 hello every. Now when we refresh, hello everyone is printed here. Now what we have done here is, so this is a heading tag, header tag. So heading tag is like, there are different heading tags, h1, h2, h3, h4, and each has its own property, or each will have its own styling. Like for an example, instead of h1 we use h2 here, hello everyone. So it is small. Similarly, if we go and type h3, it will still it will be more it will be smaller than h2. Okay, so these are the heading tags. Okay, so HTML is basically, see, you might, has anyone seen the construction of a house? Like whenever someone constructs a house, what he does is, first thing he does is he creates a structure of the house. So basically he will use bamboos, he will use bricks, and he will create a structure. Okay, that structure here is HTML. So whenever we are now developing the web application, at that time we define a structure. So that structure is hand, like developed using HTML. Now once the structure of a house is done, is completed, now we start painting the house, how the wall should look, or how the curtains, the plugs, the switches should look. So now all these things are done in web development by CSS. Okay, so basically painting the walls, painting the application is done using CSS, and JavaScript gives functionalities to that website. Like, once you have built the house, you have painted the house, now there is a switch. When you press the switch, what should happen? Now it should start the fan, right? It should start the tube lights. Okay, so that is handled by JavaScript in web application development. Okay, so now always remember, HTML creates a structure of the web application. CSS gives look and feel to that application, and JavaScript provides interactions and functionalities to that particular application. Okay. Okay, now I'll again share my screen. Okay, so this is the basic structure of HTML. Similarly, we can create a new file here. Let's say we call it as style.css. Okay, and similarly, we can create a new file here called main.js. Now the extension of HTML file is .html or .htm. Okay, both are fine. The extension of JS file is .js, and the extension of style sheets or CSS files is .css. Okay, now let's develop a small form. Now inside body, first is we'll create a div. Okay, before that, I'll tell you what div is. So div is a container tag. So anything you put inside this, okay, okay, anything inside div tag is shown like this. Okay, now what div is? Div basically creates a container. I'll tell you how. So div, I'll put background color as red. Now we'll refresh this. See, this is the full div. Okay, so in CSS, I'll explain you a concept of box model. So anything you use in HTML or in CSS, every element will depict or will represent a box. Okay, similarly, if we have another div called, and we'll change the color to blue. Okay, everyone. Now you can see there is another line called everyone. Okay, then we can add other properties as well of CSS, like background color is red. We will change the font color can be changed using just color. Then we'll type white, refresh it. See, now the text color is white, background color is red. Okay, now this type of coding, what we are doing, we have created a div tag. Okay, and in this div tag, we have written the style property. We are using style attribute to assign CSS. So this is called inline CSS. Now CSS can be written into three parts. One is into three different types. Or yes, so one is inline CSS, one is external CSS, and one is internal CSS. Okay, so what we are doing here is inline CSS. Inline means writing the CSS in that same line. Okay, this is inline CSS. Similarly, you can um, you can use style tag to write CSS. Okay, see, now here, as we are writing this CSS in that same div tag, we don't have to target the tag, because this style attribute belongs to this tag. But if we are writing it here, or if we are writing it in a different file, at that time will have to tell that okay, this CSS property is assigned to this div and not this div. So how do we target the divs? Okay, how do we target the input tags, or how do we target the HTML tags in CSS? So there are two ways, or actually there are three ways to target the elements. One is using class. So let's say this div has a class called hello div. Okay, now here, and whenever we are targeting any element or any tag in css, whenever we are targeting class of that element in css, we use dot. Okay, so dot or dot hello div, and under that we'll now pass a property. First is background color should be, let's say, let's go with green. Okay, and font size is basically, changing the size of the text, so I'll say 20 accept. Okay, now when we refresh it, see, now we have targeted this div using class. Similarly, you can target this div using IDs. Okay, to target any element using IDs, we use hash. Okay, now save it, refresh it. Nothing has changed because we haven't changed the property. Let's say we change it to red again, we refresh. Now we have targeted that particular div in css using id. Okay, similarly we can directly target using div, but the problem with this is, now if we are not saying that you have to target the div element using id or class, we are saying all the divs will have this property. Okay, so in this case, even if we remove this and we run this application, run this file, so as we have targeted div, we haven't said that which div, so it will target all the divs inside this file, and it will apply the css property here. So you can see both the divs are now in red. Okay, okay, is it visible, this? Okay, bit more. See, guys, if you are watching this from the mobile, you won't be able to see anything. So it is better if you watch this stream, or in the future classes, if you attend using your laptop or desktop, it will be more visible, because in that case you can open, so you can open VS Code, and if I ask you to write something, you can go and directly write instead of just attending this lecture, because you won't understand until you type, right? So uh, it- so I'll suggest that you use desktop or laptop instead of watching these lessons on mobile devices. Because even with this zoom in the mobile devices, you won't be able to see properly what I'm doing. Okay, so the first styling which I did was inline css, where we actually, used style attribute, and we had put the same code in that, inside that. Okay, now the second one which we used is internal css. Why internal css? Because we are using this style property in this same html file. Okay, now what if, see, now this application is just 18 line of code, so it is okay to use in inline or internal css. Okay, now, because there are only two divs. But when we develop applications on industry level, or when you are building a full project, at that time this file will go to 1000 lines. Okay, there will be 50 to 60 div tags in that one file. Okay, now writing css for all those files in a single file will make it look ugly. Okay, plus you will not be able to manage that file. So that's why now we should always use external css files. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll remove this css from here and I'll paste it here. Okay, and I'll remove this style tag from here, and now I'll refresh it. But this style property has not been no, is not reflected here. Why? You can see, right? Though I have put this in the same div tag, and I have applied this styling property here, but these styles are not reflected here. Can anyone tell? Okay, it is not getting reflected here because we have created a file but we have not imported that file here. Okay, so what will you do is now to import now to import a style sheet file. We use link href equal to dot slash style dot css. Okay, now if I do, now these now attributes are assigned here. Okay, so what we were missing is importing the file. Okay, so this is the html structure, this is the style css. Okay, and similarly, okay, now what we'll do is we'll create a form. That form will have a div is a container, and inside that we'll have a form which will have two input elements. One will be username, one will be password, and a button. Okay, and we'll see how it comes. Okay, so we'll start with basic root container. I'll put it as root. Okay, now under that we'll create. See, idea is to create something like this is a full screen, and in the center we'll create a box. Under that we'll have a form which will have two input boxes and a button. Okay, check the pointer, mouse pointer. Okay, so a full screen, in the center we'll have a box, under that we'll have input element and a button. Okay, so for the full thing we are using div. So this becomes our parent div. We have assigned it the id as root. Under that now we'll create another box here in the center which should align in the center. Let's say we'll put a class here. Okay, and we'll call it as login box. Okay, under that now we will create another tag which will contain input element. Okay, input type equal to text, and a placeholder saying enter username. Okay, and we'll call this div as form element. Now copy this. So this is one input element, this is another input element. Okay, and one more button. Okay, so form element and we will use, either we can use button directly like this, login. Okay. Okay, we'll do one more thing. Now that login box should say something, right? So header should be there. So what we'll do is class name, or instead of this, what we'll do is we'll directly use h2 login box. Okay. Now refresh. Okay, and we have put some styling here. We'll remove the styling. See, I told you, right? Whenever we now a house is built, first they create a structure, right? They will put bricks and they will create a structure. That house will not look good, but it will have everything which a house should have. Okay, so this is our HTML. If you just use HTML, this is how it will look. Okay, now we have, but we don't want it not to look like this, right? So what we'll do is now we will paint the house. Okay, how we will paint the house? Okay, for most of you guys, these things might look like, for some of you guys this might look complicated, but as we'll from tomorrow onwards we'll be starting HTML. So you will get to know, like I'll explain you everything that has been done here, and all the attributes, all the input elements, form elements, then buttons, check boxes, everything will be explained there. Then you will be able to relate everything. Right now I just wanted to give you a feel of how, what HTML is, what CSS is, what JS is. That's why I'm writing this code. So don't worry about like if you are not able to understand. Okay. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll paint the house. So first is, I now want the full background. I want this full background as a blue color. Okay, so what I'll do is, now we have imported this file, and this is root background color is blue. Okay, I'll refresh it. This is the background color. Okay, see, now I'll tell you now how we can use developer tool here. Now what we'll do is, now I'll open, click on this button, go to more tools and developer tools. Okay, now go to elements. So now right now what we are trying to do, we are trying to write, so we already wrote HTML, we are trying to write CSS. And I told you, whenever you are dealing with HTML and CSS, this first tab will be useful, right? Elements tag. Now what we'll do is, we will now select this. Now you can see that now this div is taking some space, right? Now you can see it is not now taking the full white, it is not now, like that blue color is not applied to full white space. You can see some white line on the top, then left. Why? Because it is inheriting some CSS from body. Okay, you can see here. So what we'll do is margin 0, padding 0. Why is it taking so we applied CSS property here. So what we'll do is, body, sorry, body. Now this body, we are as all the HTML files will have only one body, we can directly put body and apply the CSS here. Okay, Now if you see, this css is displayed here. It is coming from style.css. Okay, now what we'll do is, now we'll go to this, and we'll give height as vh. Or let's do one thing, instead of this, position absolute, top is 0, left is 0, it is 0, and bottom is 0. Okay, and so this is blue color. Now I don't want this blue color, instead we'll go with some, we will use this blue color. Okay, okay, now what I'll do is, I'll copy this css and I'll paste it here. Save. Now when you refresh, see, so what we are now doing here is, we are selecting the element, we are doing try hit, and once we finalize the css, we take that css and put it in our code, right? Okay, it is enter username, we'll change it to enter password, and input type text, instead of that it will be input type password, and enter password. Okay, you refresh it, this becomes this. Now what we want is, this box, see, this is the login box. Now we want this login box to come in the center. Okay, so what we will do is, in the root element, we'll click on root element. Now we'll apply some flex properties. Display flex, align item center, justify content center. See, now this login box has come in the center. Okay, now we'll put this here. Fresh. Now I want this box, the input box, to be in white color. Background color should be has fff. Has fff is hex code for white. Okay, we'll apply some padding. Padding is, see, most people confuse between padding and margin. Okay, padding is, this is a div. Okay, and padding will give space inside the box, while margin will actually give no, that box a space from the previous or relative div element. I'll explain you both once we like once we start writing html. Okay, or once we start learning html. So what I'll do is, now this, as this white box and these texts, they are stick to each other, so I'll put some padding here. Padding 0 and 0. Okay, and rem this. Okay, now I want these borders to be slightly curved. Okay, so what we'll do is, border radius, we'll put 5 pixel, we'll put it as 10 pixel. Okay, now this is login box. So what we'll do is, dot login box. Now we are targeting this div, so we applied this property to login box, right? Now we have to target this div and apply this css. As this is class, we can target it using dot. Okay, dot login box, and we'll apply this property here. Now you can see a box here. Okay, one more thing. Whenever you do change here, like for an example, I change the color of this box to this color. Okay, and if you forget to copy this and paste it in your code, and if you refresh it, it will go away. Okay, so make sure you don't forget. Once you are done with the css, now make sure that you copy this and paste it in your code. Okay, now we'll increase the height of this box. Height and width is, let's say, 10 rem, 20, 30, 40. This looks good. And height is let's not, let's let the height adjust by itself. So we'll put width as this. This is the width. Now refresh it. Okay, now this is one div form element. Under that we have input. Okay, now you can see all these form elements are stick to each other, right? But we don't want it like this. It is not looking good. So what we'll do is we'll do margin bottom using this class name. Okay, so what we'll do is dot form element margin bottom 1 rem. Okay, and if we refresh it, now see, and here understand one thing. I have told that div of any class with form element should have margin bottom. Okay, div of any class, so there are three classes here, should have margin bottom. That's why all of these divs now have margin bottom. One is this, which has margin bottom. You can see the orange part, right? Then we have this also has margin bottom, and this will also have margin bottom. Okay, now we want to change the look and feel of this text element. So what we'll do is, let's say, no, height is 1 rem. Okay, let's keep it as 2. Width is, will occupy full width. Okay, padding will put 10 pixel, 0 and 0, 10 pixel. Will not be padding. Instead what we'll do is, we'll change the border color to as BBB. Okay, 1 pixel solid as BBB. Okay, and we'll do border something. Okay, border is 1 pixel, this, and we'll give a um, we'll give a, a curve on the border radius. We'll put it as 5 pixel. Now it is too high. We'll reduce it. Okay, this is good. So we'll go with 5 pixel. Okay, so input type text. Now we have to target input type text and input type password. Okay, how do we target it in CSS? Input type equal to text, and input type equal to password should have this property. Okay, I'll explain you both. So what we did here is, let's first target input type text. I'll save it. I'll reload this. See, only this box has this CSS, not the below one. Okay, but we want to give this styling to both of them. So, but one is input type text and one is input type password, right? So that's why one is input type text, one is input type password. Okay, now save it. Now both of them have this styling. Okay, now what if we don't give this and we remove input type text as well? Okay, now can anyone tell what will happen here? What I have done is I have targeted input element and I have applied this css property. What will happen? Guys, can anyone tell what will happen? Okay, so nothing will happen. So what it says is all the input all the input tags should have this property. Now there are two input tags and we have applied this style. So even if we refresh, now these properties are applied directly here. Okay, because we have said that input, so input should have this property. Input should have this property. Okay, now we want this button. So we'll target this as button. Okay, before that we'll directly write it here. Background color should be has bbb. Click on this, so you can see this um, small square, right? So this is a color picker. So once when you click on this, you click on this and you from this dropper, wherever you click on the browser, it will take that color. So I'll take this color. Okay, and width is 100%, height is 2 rem, border is 0, border radius is 5 pixel, color is sfff. Okay, so now and we'll give padding as 0 pixel. Yeah, I don't think we need padding here. See here, this is our button. Okay, so this is our small login box. Now what we'll do is, see, I told you, right? HTML defines the structure of the web application. CSS decides the look and feel of that web application. But now functionality, what should happen when we switch on the light or when we switch on the button, whether the fan should start, light should start. So all those functionalities are handled by JavaScript. Okay, all these things should be handled by JavaScript. So what we'll do is we'll type username here, let's say Sunny. We'll type password here, sunny at the rate 12345, and once login we will show an alert box telling what is the username and what is the password. Okay, right now nothing will happen because we haven't integrated JavaScript yet. Okay, before that we'll give ID to each one of them. Button, button ID is button, username ID is username, password ID is password. Okay, so the difference between classes and IDs are, so let's suppose in a class there are two Ramesh, or no, so wrong example. So in a class there are two boys, right? So whenever teacher comes, or faculty comes and she says or he says that boys stand up, so all the boys in the class will stand up. But if the faculty says Ramesh stand up, so Ramesh, only Ramesh will stand up. Okay, so similarly, now in HTML, id is, so if this id is assigned to this input tag, then you make sure that you don't use this id for another input tags. But if class name can be assigned, same class name can be assigned to multiple elements. So in our in case of our example, boys become class and id becomes Ramesh. Okay, so input id is username. So, and there is a reason behind this. I'll explain you why we should not use same ids for multiple elements. Okay, so now what we'll do is, first of all, we'll import this main.js file into HTML file. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll import it here. Script source equal to main.js. Is it getting called? Let's see. Refresh it. Now what I'll do is I'll do alert. Alert will show a pop-up on the screen. Send. I think I'm doing some mistake here. Okay, now here is the alert. Okay, that means we have successfully imported this file. Now first of all, what we need is, whenever this button is clicked, we will show an alert. Okay, how this can be achieved? So first we will target this button. So in JavaScript, how do we target this button? Let button le equal to document dot get element by id. Here we are saying dot document dot get element by id. And what is the id of the button? btn. Okay, so btn. Now we'll listen to the click. So button dot ele dot on click alert hello world. Let's see if this works. Okay, it's not working. Is it showing some error? What it is saying? Button dot is not a function. Okay, okay, wait, there is a better way to handle this. Let's write a function here. Function on button click. Okay. Alert hello world. Now save this. Now in this, on click is there, on click equal to button click. Still not working. Okay, now it is working. Okay, so button id on click, we are calling a function. That function is here, which is doing alert. So you can see a pop-up here, right? This pop-up is alert here. Okay, now what we'll do is, whatever a user is typing here, we'll take that value and show it in the alert. Okay, So first now we have to take the value of this, take the value of this. To take the value of this, we have to target this element. Okay, so for that, what we'll do is let username equal to document dot get element by id username, let's say ule is this. Now this is the user element. Okay, or let me type it like this, user element. Okay, now user element dot value. Okay, now I will tell you. So I told you, right, whenever we are dealing with JavaScript, at that time console will be useful. Okay, so what we are doing is console.log user element dot value, refresh, type, this value is printed here. Okay, Sunny Sharma, click on this, Sunny Sharma is printed here. So this is happening because of console.log, right? See, element tag is used mostly when we are dealing with HTML and CSS. Console log will be used when we are dealing with JavaScript. Okay, so now let user, okay, wait, so what we'll do is let user name equal to user element dot value. So what we are doing is, here is we have created a variable, we have stored the element here. We have created another variable, we have stored the value here. Okay, now username, in that input box value will be stored in username. Similarly, we'll target password and get the password. Okay, so this is password element, this is password, this is password. Okay, and this is password element. Now alert Okay, so what we are doing here is we will do alert username, will call call that variable here password, and that variable password variable here. Okay, now Sunny Sharma and password is this. I click on login and nothing happens, something failed. What failed? Did we not refresh the code? Okay, we did not refresh it basically. So Sunny Sharma and okay, now we click on this. Username is Sunny Sharma and password is sunny at the rate 12345. Okay, so this becomes a functionality. So I told you, right, HTML is used to create the structure of the web application. CSS makes sure that look and feel of that application is good. Okay, and JavaScript provides functionality to that web page so that user can interact. Okay, so this is how user will interact. Now, so once this is done, the next step for front end developer will be, he will take this username and password, he will create a payload. Okay, now he will call the API to log in, and he will pass this payload with that API call API request, which will be received by the backend, no, which will be received by the web server. Okay, where backend developer would have written a logic, business logic, which will actually go and search this username and username in the database, and he will verify the credential whether username and password are same in the database stored. If it is same, then he will respond back saying, okay, user is logged in. Okay, or else he will say user credentials does not match, or password is invalid, or username is invalid, or make sure that you use right credentials. So this is how this is how we use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to build a web page. Okay. Okay, till here, guys. Any questions? Okay. Okay. Okay, so now we'll close the session. If you have any questions, you can comment on this video. So we'll reply back on the video itself. Okay, and yes, attendance is taken care by the backend team, so I won't be taking the attendance. Okay, guys, thank you for joining. Um, so again, this was my for me also, this was my first experience doing this live session. So mostly I interact with students offline. This was my first experience. So if you think anything needs to be changed, comment, um, or or yes, basically comment, and I'll make sure that next time I take care of all those things as well. Okay. Okay, guys.